As the 2026 Winter Olympic Games are now underway in Italy, I thought we'd take a look at the best-selling winter sports game of the 1980s, Winter Games from Epyx Software. Founded in 1978 in San Francisco, Epyx released many memorable titles, including Pit Stop, Impossible Mission, Rescue on Fractalus, Barbie, and also developed the first colour handheld, the Atari Lynx. But for me, Epyx was all about the multi-event sports games. Throughout the 80s and early 90s there were plenty of winter sports games released for the various home micros and consoles, but for me it was all about winter games on the Commodore 64, which I had on the Kicks budget re-release, and loved the biathlon event, which we'll be checking out shortly. Distributed in Europe by US Gold, Winter Games was the 1985 follow-up to the highly successful Summer Games 1 and 2, released earlier that year. The games were based on the sporting events of the Winter Olympics, but as Epyx didn't have an official Olympic licence, they just had to name it Epyx Winter Games. And as some of you already know, I'm not exactly a big fan of sports games. But as a kid, I absolutely loved these multi-event games, probably due to watching athletics with my dad. Games such as Daley Thompson's Decathlon, Track and Field, and Summer Games, to name a few. Halfway through the loading sequence, you're treated to an opening ceremony featuring a pixelated athlete lighting the flame before white doves fly across the screen. You get the choice of either competing in all the events, some of them, or just practice. After entering your name, you and up to 7 other players get to choose from one of the 17 countries. Or, if you want, you can represent Epyx themselves. After choosing your country and listening to their national anthems, you get the opening ceremony again, because why not? And let the games begin. The first event is the Hot Dog Aerials. Strange name, I know, but it's a term that originated in the 70s and refers to the daring acrobatic jumps performed by freestyle skiers. Press fire to start a jump and then push in a direction to perform a move, but make sure the joystick is centred as you land or you'll fall arse over tit. Next up is the biathlon, my favourite event growing up. This is basically skiing and shooting. Move the joystick left and right at a steady pace on the even planes and waggle faster as you go uphill. This can be a little tricky to get the right rhythm, but the easiest bit is the downhill screens, as you just tap the joystick down in time with the ski poles. Eventually you'll reach 5 targets. Lock and load your gun, then try hitting all 5, but keep an eye on your heart rate, as this affects your accuracy. Each missed target adds a 5-second penalty, but you get the chance to shoot 20 targets in total. This is by far the longest event in the game, but certainly the most enjoyable. The next event is the speed skating, and again you need to move the joystick left and right in rhythmic strokes according to the manual to build up your speed. Be the first to reach the 250 metre mark to take home the gold. Figure skating is next, and this is the one I struggled with as a kid, as I kept falling on my arse. Believe me, I went ice skating with school once. It is an overrated experience. You get 1 minute to gracefully perform all 7 moves in any order and land them, but be sure to be facing forward when the time runs out or you'll fall. Onto the ski jump now, and the object here is once the skier is in the air, make sure to correct his posture for landing safely by moving the joystick. So for example, if he's leaning too far forward, move the stick left and vice versa if he's leaning back. Next is the free skating, and this is basically the same as the figure skating, but you have 2 minutes this time to do whichever moves you like. The final event is the bobsleigh, and this took a little getting used to, as you need to steer hard in the opposite direction to the centrifugal force. So left on the left turns and right on the right turns. The map helps you know which turns are approaching, but keep an eye on your speed.
Sinking. You did? Yeah, man.
So it seems like Epyx ported winter games to almost everything. Too many to show here, so I've just captured most of these ports, starting with the Amstrad version, which has a different opening ceremony sequence than the other ports, and this was only available on the disc version. Kids that had the cassette version had to endure long load times, as the game was spread over 4 sides on 2 tapes. The Spectrum port had both a 48K version and, about 6 months later, a 128K version. The 48K had the events spread over both sides of the tape and very little music, whereas this 128K version loaded all the events in one go and had more music and sound effects. The Amiga version looks and sounds great, as you'd expect from a 16-bit machine, but the best thing about this port is that it's the only one where the biathlon section scrolls. At first glance, the Atari ST looks just like the Amiga ports, but if you look closely, there are some subtle graphical differences, particularly in some of the backgrounds. Unfortunately though, this version hasn't got the scrolling during the biathlon. The MS-DOS port has decent graphics and plays reasonably well, but looks odd due to the CGA colour palette. Pink trees and mountains, anyone? The NES version gets a lot of stick for having clunky controls, but they didn't seem that bad when I played it, and I'm sure they could have had all 7 events on the cartridge instead of only the 4 that we ended up getting. Onto the Atari 2600 now, and yeah, this isn't the best looking winter games out there, but it does have 7 events, only instead of the figure and free skating, it has 2 new events, the slalom and the luge. Now, you'd think the Atari 7800 would have had all 7 events, but it only has 4 for some reason. But what little events are included play really well, as it uses the same code from the Commodore 64 version. Graphically, the Macintosh port looks amazing, albeit in black and white, although as I was emulating this, I couldn't get any sound whatsoever, but it was still interesting to see nonetheless. Also, I noticed that the Mac version is the only one that during the opening ceremony, the 3 flags in the background are raised when the flame is lit. The Apple II version has all 7 events and doesn't look too bad, but I couldn't really get a proper feel for the gameplay as I was having to use the mouse. Apple II GS uses the same code as the Amiga and ST as they all look very similar. Unfortunately, this is missing the speed skating event, but still a decent port. Now, there were a few other versions that I didn't cover. The MSX, which isn't all that different to the Speccy, the Famicom Disk System, which is just the same as the NES, and the NEC PC-88, which looks awesome, but I couldn't manage to emulate that version. The magazines at the time were extremely positive and praised the game, with Zap giving the C64 version 94% and Commodore User awarding it 4 stars out of 5. Crash and Sinclair User gave the 48K Spectrum version 93% and 5 out of 5 respectively, and the Amstrad port received 90% from Amstrad Action. Epyx would go on to give us World Games and the legendary California games, but Winter Games hits all the nostalgic notes for me. It captured the multitasking nature of the Olympics. How 1 minute you're a powerhouse speed skater and the next a graceful artist on the ice. So, as we watch the athletes in Italy this month, it's fun to remember that for many of us, our first gold medal wasn't won on a mountain. It was won on a 13-inch CRT television. So, did you have Winter Games back in the day? Which was your favourite event? And which one made you want to throw your joystick across the room? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video or have a taste for nostalgia, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm off to watch the curling now. Take care, bye!